It's another Thunder Thursday on News OK Live. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, here to hang out with our Thunder coverage team, starting with John Rohde from his home in Edmond. He's getting ready to take off on a 6-game road trip. They're going to split it up. The other guy, the other anchor leg of that road trip, and our other Thunder beat writer, Darnell Mayberry, joining us from across. Darnell, are you at home or are you across the street at the Thunder training facility?
I'm at home today.
Welcome home. Not for long, though, my friend. And just below us, at 9000 North Broadway in Oklahoma City, in the Oklahoman newsroom, is columnist Jenny Carlson. The Thunder Thursday Hangout on News OK Live, of course, as every week, is brought to you by our friends at Advent Heat, Air, and Plumbing. If you have any needs for heating, air conditioning, or plumbing, please check with our friends at Advent. Guys, the Thunder, another decisive victory. This one over a team that rolled in last night on a 6-game winning streak, the Denver Nuggets, a team that they're used to playing in the playoffs, contending with in the division, and they just roll over them. Guys, let's start off with this. Is the Thunder playing at the top of its game, and is the Thunder back to being the best in the West? Jenny, let's start with you.
Well, I think that was clearly one of their better performances last night. I mean, Denver's a team that likes to get outscore a lot, and the Thunder just put them under their thumb to start with and really never let up. I thought that was a good sign for this team. But, you know, I've always thought this was a team that was at or near the top of the West. I mean, clearly this road trip is going to be definitive for them, though, as they're going to play the Clippers. They're going to be out West and play some of these teams that they really need to beat. So I don't know who needs to get the phone, but there it is. But, yeah, I mean, I think clearly this is a team that is playing well, has played well, and needs to continue to play well as this road trip gets going.
What about it, Darnell? Is the Thunder has the Thunder reestablished itself as the best in the West?
Yeah, and I think that Washington loss was a wake-up call. You know, they went out to D.C. and lost by 2 points to the league worst Washington Wizards, and ever since then, 5-game winning streak. They're winning by an average margin of 14.5 points per game. The defense has been pretty impressive, and the offense has been humming, led by Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. Those two guys are on a tear right now, and I think they're just really focused on what they have to do. George Karl said it best before the game. He said this team is on a mission right now. They have a championship determination, and I think we saw that last night in that win against the Nuggets.
John, 11 steals, 11 blocks. Is that that's a stat pulled from last night, but is that sort of the clearest indication of the determination of this team?
Yeah, that's a good indicator, and like Darnell said, that might be their best first quarter all season long. Now, Denver looked like it had a hangover. They were on the back end of a back-to-back, but that doesn't always guarantee a win. You know, Washington had played the night before when the Thunder lost to them. They actually had 7 or 8 hours more rest, so they took care of business. And if they jump out early and they hold serve, they can beat anybody like they did last night. I mean, Denver was the hottest team in the West, and there was no doubt who won last night.
And one thing to add to that is, you know, people always say there's a common expression in the NBA that the toughest game is normally the one that you play the first one at home after a road trip. They went out on the road, they won 3 straight, they came back at home. So, yes, the Nuggets were playing on the second night of a back-to-back, but the Thunder could have had that trap game being at home for the first time after a 3-game road trip, but they didn't let up, so you have to give them credit as well.
Guys, the road trip, of course, has got a lot of interesting stops. We'll get to a couple of the other ones later. But Tuesday night at the Staples Center is a matchup with the Clippers. And so I ask you if the Thunder's the best team in the West. Now I ask you, are the Clippers for real? Darnell, we'll start with you on that.
Yeah, the Clippers are for real. I've said it all season long. I think that's one of the 2 or 3 teams that the Thunder needs to be worried about the most. That Los Angeles Clippers team is deep. They're athletic. They've got bigs. They've got a tremendous point guard, the best point guard in the league in my book, and Chris Paul, who's a closer as well. So they've got a lot of firepower, presumably the 6th man of the year in Jamal Crawford. And now they're starting to play well for Vinny Del Negro. So it seems like things are coming together for that Clippers team, that they seem like they're rallying around each other and enjoying playing with each other. It's sort of like this Thunder team was last year with James Harden in the mix. So I think that's a team that the Thunder really needs to be worried about. But if you're asking who's the best team in the league, the Thunder beat the Clippers. Granted, it was a home win, but because they beat the Clippers and they're neck and neck in the standings, essentially, I think you have to give the edge to the Thunder.
Jenny, who you got as the foremost threat for the Thunder in the West? Clippers, Spurs, or Grizzlies?
Well, I mean, I think you probably give the nod to the Clippers amongst those three. The Spurs, I mean, obviously they're getting up there in age, and I think we saw last year in the Western Conference Finals that eventually this talented youth that the Thunder has can win out, and I think they can win out again in a playoff series. The Grizzlies are clearly a good team, but I think that depth that the Clippers have, it's almost shocking when you see who all they bring off the bench. I mean, they've just got guys that come off their bench and you think, my gosh, wasn't he one of the starting five? No, he came off the bench. That depth is really pretty unbelievable when you see it out there. And if they can get things going, they're going to be dangerous. Now, they don't have quite the playoff experience that the Thunder has. I think that gives the Thunder an advantage. And I think that gives, you still have to give a team like the Spurs and Grizzlies some nods because of that. But if the Clippers start getting going in the playoffs, look out, because I think that depth is the thing that really it would be troubling to me if I was another team in the West.
John, we're looking at this Clippers team that Thunder plays on Tuesday. We're skipping over, of course, two other big games on this road trip. But let's just talk about the Clippers for a second more. John, their depth is there's a lot of experience tied to that. Do you sort of give the Clippers the advantage on the bench, or is the Thunder starting to regain some of its shine on the bench? And what we saw last night, sort of the rise of the B team. Does the Thunder have a chance by the time the playoffs roll around, say, hey, we've got pretty good depth ourselves?
Well, that's exactly right. Last night was a good sign. I was talking to Barry about this last night, and he goes, where would you put the Thunder in the West? And I go, well, third, but 1, 2, and 3 are pretty much the same answer. Only a game and a half separate them right now. But the reason I said the Thunder was third was their bench, but the bench showed something last night. If it's DeAndre or Reggie or both, and Kevin Martin's always been there, and to beat does still have his spurts. But here's the interesting thing about the Clippers. What if their bench is too deep? When Grant Hill came back, everybody goes, okay, now let's see what happens with the chemistry. Well, Chris Paul's been out, but that makes their bench, more narrow. So if everybody, as odd as it sounds, if everybody's healthy with the Clippers and everybody wants to play, not everybody can play. So that is the most interesting question to me is if they're at full strength, the Clippers, is there a chance they could be too deep?
What about that, Darnell?
It's a fair point. It's a valid question. I think that anytime you have a team that has that much talent, you worry about chemistry issues and playing time and if there are enough minutes to go around. But it seems like, the veterans that they have, they've sort of had the individual accolades and Grant Hill's chasing the championship. Chauncey Billups has been to the mountaintop. He wants to get back. And Chris Paul has never been out of the second round of the playoffs. So, I think they have enough veteran leadership that have their eyes on the prize, that they know what they're playing for. And I don't think, at least in my opinion, I don't think that personal biases are going to get in the way and personal goals are going to get in the way of that team. Like I said, they seem like they really enjoy playing for one another.
Jenny, on the Thunder B team, we saw the rise of it. Barry Trammell wrote about that for his column on News OK right now. We knew Kevin Martin, who John and Darnell have written about as a sixth man of the year candidate, a strong replacement, of course, for James Harden. We know all about Nick Collison, but it's really sort of the other three spots that have seemed to be a little bit in play. Of those three, Liggins, Fabit, and Reggie Jackson. Which of those three, Jenny, starting with you, do you think have had the biggest factor on the improvement of the second team?
Well, I think you could make an argument for any of the three. I'm going to probably say that DeAndre Liggins, just from the fact that he's really come from barely making the roster. I mean, Darnell chronicled that coming out of training camp, the fact that Liggins was really that last guy to make the roster. Has bounced around between Oklahoma City and the D League, and just kind of found an opportunity and ran with it. And here we are, dealing with Scott Brooks, who really has shown few signs of breaking away from his 9-man rotation. And all of a sudden, wham, he's playing 10, and DeAndre Liggins is it. He's done enough to have earned that spot, and then starts. I mean, to me, he's been the one that has really stepped up his game and really had a surprising impact on things. And I think, as Barry mentioned, they've now got a complete second five. It's not 4 + 1. It's a true 5-man second tier rotation, and that's because of Liggins. And so I think he's been huge in all of this.
John, you were out in Phoenix. You wrote about Liggins' sort of debut with the second team and his coming out party, as it were. He's come out. Is he staying out?
Yeah, the debut was actually in Portland, where he went from 0 minutes to 40. I mean, he played more minutes than Durant. And Brooks says, I'm not taking him out. His energy was great. He almost had a double-double. A guy who starts out in the D League, starts the season in the D League with a triple-double, almost starts out in the NBA with a double-double. And like Darnell wrote early, this guy is Thabo light. I mean, he is that kind of body, that kind of attitude, that kind of just fortitude and energy that he brings defensively. He's the obvious Thabo replacement. So it is mix and match, and I'm not sure why it took so long to discover or rediscover DeAndre, but the point is, Thabo twisted his neck, and DeAndre stepped in. And Darnell, I don't know how he could have played any better. You couldn't help but notice him out there.
Now, whoa, you're going to give Barry Trammell a heart attack, guys, talking about replacing Thabo Cephalosha. You're watching the Thunder Thursday Hangout on News OK Live, and we're going to take a couple questions from our readers on our live chat on the News OK Live page, and that feeds right into one of their questions, Darnell, which is DeAndre Liggins the Thabo Cephalosha in waiting? Frozen. They're all frozen. We'll take a break. We'll take a break from our questions to remind you you're watching the Thunder Thursday Hangout on News OK Live. The Thunder Thursday is sponsored by our good friends at Advent Heat, Air, and Plumbing. If you have any heating, air conditioning, or plumbing needs, please give our friends at Advent a call. The Thunders, of course, is getting ready to embark on a 6-game road trip. That'll be split up for our coverage team with John Rhodey taking the first 2 games. Here they'll be joining us, and Darnell Mayberry holding down the last 4. We were talking about a question from the News OK Live page. We hear you, Darnell, and I'm going to ask you this question.
He's talking.
Can you hear me?
And not hearing us.
But we can't hear you.
There's no, we have some technical difficulties. We'll fix this out.
Now we can hear you.
Super. Rejoining us are our Thunder coverage team, Darnell Mayberry, Jenny Carlson, and John Rhodey. They're unfrozen and getting ready to answer this question, starting with Darnell. Is Liggins the Thabo Cephalosha in waiting?
Well, that's a lot to put on a guy who's played in 4 meaningful games for the Thunder. I'm not going to jump the gun and say that he's Thabo Cephalosha in waiting, especially since Thabo Cephalosha is having a career year. He's now shooting the ball the way that we've all sort of waited for him to start shooting the ball. His defense is as good as ever, and he's been able to stay healthy. He missed those games with the neck injury. He missed that game, but DeAndre Liggins has a long way to go to become one of the premier defenders, perimeter defenders in this league, like Thabo is. And I think it'd be premature on all of us to say that he's the next Thabo Cephalosha when Thabo is so incredibly good at what he does. I think we just should slow down and let it play out a little bit more. Slow down?
Since when do we slow down, Darnell? Our readers don't want to slow down. They want to get these questions asked. I'll throw out another one, though. Guys, this is Marcus Smart has logged in here. And John, he wants to know, the Marcus Smart of the Oklahoma State Cowboys, of course I joke, but he's a hot prospect climbing the NBA draft boards. Is that the kind of player the Thunder would be looking to draft if it got lucky with the Raptors pick in this next coming up draft? I'm asking that to John. John Rhodey, can you hear me?
Well, if you can hear me, yeah, you take a point. Yeah, I got you. You got me back?
Yeah, did you?
If you can get your hands on Marcus Smart, you do it. I know they got an all-star point guard in Russell. Yeah, I heard you.
Sam Presti showed a lot of interest in him. Of course, there's a lot of interest locally in Marcus Smart, a sensational blending player for Oklahoma State. And then, of course, the Thunder has 2 first-round draft picks in addition to its own this next draft, with the Raptors sort of being the movable part. I guess that's protected for the first 2 picks, John, is that right? And or Darnell, is that the Raptors have it protected for the first 2 spots, but if it falls to 4 or 3, the Thunder could get them. So that was a question about Marcus Smart. Another question, guys, and I'll throw this one to Jenny, and that is Eric Maynor. Does he now have a reserve seat on the bench, and is he driving down Earl Watson Boulevard? In other words, we've seen the last of Eric Maynor.
Sure feels that way, doesn't it? I mean, last night in a blowout game, not really getting a chance to see much of Eric Maynor at all. Yeah, I mean, it really does feel like he's taken a permanent seat on the bench. And Darnell and John have both written, he had basically a 25-game retry, to get back out there and prove that he was that backup point guard. And Scott Brooks didn't like the way those 25 games went. And now we're seeing Reggie Jackson take over. And frankly, it's, Reggie Jackson hasn't been, he's not Russell Westbrook yet, but he's definitely shown some signs of improvement. You got to think the more that he's out there, the better he's going to get. And clearly, I think the Thunder has to be thinking, what are they doing? What's the next step with Eric Maynor, his contract, those sorts of things. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see much more of Eric Maynor at all, at least not on the court in the Thunder uniform. I don't know what their plan is for him as far as trades and such. Darnell and John know more about that than I do, but clearly it looks like he has fallen out of favor, and they're just willing to give Reggie that playing time to see what he can do with it.
John and Darnell, I'm going to direct this question about Maynor to you guys, and it's related to the fascination with the guys who are not playing. John, from your standpoint, I want to ask you, is this sort of our college football background seeping in, sort of like who's the backup and why isn't he playing more? It's sort of the Blake Bell, whoever's not playing is the most popular quarterback on campus, of course. Or Darnell, do you see this in other markets where there's a lot of talk about the guys on the bench and in other NBA cities who aren't playing? I'll ask John first. Is this OU football and OSU football thought process seeping in with a fascination about who's not playing?
Oh, yeah, we still have the collegiate mentality, everything from how important last night's game was. If they had lost, it would have been crushing for the Thunder, even though it just would have been, a bad chance to finally win at home when you're not there very often. There are not many teams out there where it's totally accepted who's the number 1 point guard and who's the number 2. Last night, the Nuggets have 2 great point guards in Andre Miller and Ty Lawson, Darnell. And before the game, George Karl was kind of implying that Andre Miller might be starting soon.
There's the fascination, of course, and it comes back to our depth chart standpoint. But Darnell, are they in Boston? Are they fascinated with the backup point guard in Boston?
I can't speak to Boston, but I can speak to Washington. And I know that here's the good thing for the Thunder fans. It's better to be having these conversations about guys who can actually play than guys who can't, because as a fan of the Wizards, we're talking about guys who can't play with that team. So, it's good to have Eric Maynor on the bench and Reggie Jackson, who's a capable backup, being able to debate whether or not who should be playing between those 2 guys. So that's the beauty of it for the Thunder. All these guys can play. He's
just giddy because he's unbeaten against the Thunder this year.
We talked about that last time, John. We went back to the days when Darnell got extra specially dressed up for the games when he was covering the Wizards. Remember his Wizard outfit? I love that. I'd like to see that again, Darnell, if it still fits. Speaking of a guy debating guys who can play, Serge Ibaka. And we've got a question from a reader about how he's growing as a player every year. But how do we explain his sort of secondary role in the offense, or not even secondary, tertiary or fourtiary role in the offense the last 3 games? He's averaging 6 to 7 shot attempts. What's happened to Ibaka after he slipped out since he's been out, Darnell?
Well, I think you have to start with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook going bananas. Yes, bananas out on that West Coast road trip. I mean, those guys were really lighting up the scoreboard. And when they're doing that, you really can't complain much about Ibaka not being involved as much. And that's sort of what happened last night. Ibaka only had 5 shot attempts, but Russell Westbrook came out and he was on fire. He had 16 points in the first quarter. The Nuggets as a team had 18 in that opening period. So if that's happening, then Serge Ibaka obviously is going to have to take a back seat to those 2 All-Stars. And, there shouldn't be much of a problem. When that's not happening, that's when I have a problem with it. Serge Ibaka needs to average probably close to 9-10 shots a game on average. And I think if he doesn't, then there's a problem with the offense.
John and Jenny, the next question about Ibaka is about his contract, which looked like a big deal last summer when he signed it. But now, does Sam Presti's signing of Serge Ibaka in the offseason look like one of the great signings and maybe even a steal for the Thunder?
No, $49 million is still too much. But the big guys go for more than they deserve. That's been the way for a long time in the NBA. The beauty about Serge lately, I mean, other than the injury, is like Darnell said, from the second half of the Phoenix game through almost the entire first quarter last night, Westbrook and Durant scored 71 of the team's 77 total points. That's crazy. And you know what's weird about it? Is I hardly even noticed. It happens. It's in the natural flow. Serge didn't demand the ball. Heck, Perkins is being more selfish on offense than Ibaka. Ibaka seems to have accepted everything coming his way. I really like the way Serge is playing all the way around, offense and defense.
Yeah, Rody, you hit the nail on the head. Perkins takes 6 shots last night. Ibaka takes 5. What's up with that?
That's what the reader wants to know. Jenny, was that a steal or not, signing Serge?
Well, I think you are talking about a lot of money regardless, but clearly he's a guy that I think is only going to get better. He's just continued that trajectory, and there's no reason to think that he's going to stop now. I don't know if y'all remember, but back last year during the playoffs when Charles Barkley was in town, I had a chance to go around and sort of show him Oklahoma City. But part of our conversation was we got to talking about his assertion about Oklahoma City as a jump shooting team. And, did he think that they needed to go out and find that interior in the paint, big man, back to the basket threat? And, basically what he said to me, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, is that this team may already have all the pieces that they need. They just might not be to that level yet. And I think the guy he was referencing was Serge Ibaka. I don't think there's too much doubt about that he really felt like offensively Serge could be a guy that could handle more, and we've already seen that. But I think what John and Darnell said is right. I mean, here's a guy that is one of your best scorers on the team. He's not getting a ton of shots, and yet at least outwardly we don't see him pouting. We don't see him worried about any of this stuff, which I think is maybe even another thing to love about Serge Ibaka. You love the shot blocks, you love the evolving offensive game, but you also have to kind of love that this is a guy who, at least outwardly, does not look selfish at all when it comes to the offense.
Speaking of all the pieces they had, and one of the pieces they didn't have, another good question from the News OK Live page, guys, is about Kevin Martin. And after all the press of the Harden trade, Frank wants to know, do you think Sam Presti will be looking even harder now at keeping Kevin Martin? I know that contract, aspiring deal, $12 or $13 million, John. It sort of, when trade was made, I thought, hey, they'll have a lot of nice old cap room next year to play with once Kevin Martin has his one-and-done season. But do we still look at it like that? Are they going to make a hard push, and can they keep Kevin Martin? Okay. John, Darnell, looks like everybody's frozen. Jenny, are you with us still?
No, I'm here.
Okay, well, let's start with you. The other two guys look like they're frozen on video for a second.
I think Darnell's back. I don't know about Rody. Oh, Rody's back.
Guys, we had a little technical difficulty. Let's answer that question. Jenny, start with you. Yeah. Are they going to keep Kevin Martin?
Well, it sure seems like it's trending that way. I mean, I don't know if that was their plan initially, but the way he's playing and the way he's fit in and and all of those things. I think when he first got traded here, there was some thought of whether he'd make it the whole season. And now, you have to feel like he's not only going to make this entire season, but he's a guy that is fit in well enough that they're going to surely try to figure out a way to keep him here. I think that he's the type of guy that has been through enough seasons of losing and not being on the right side of things that, maybe he's a guy that to play on a winning team in some of these later years of his career, he might do some things contractually to help the Thunder out to keep other guys. I don't know, but I think he's the type of guy that you at least want to ask those questions to and see if they can't get something worked out, because he has been a guy that's able to be more of a scorer when he's out there with the second team and be more of a shooter when he's out there with the first team guys late in games and those sorts of things. So I think he's a good fit for this team. And I have to think they're going to try to figure out something to keep him around beyond this season.
John, the odds that Kmart's not just a one-season rental?
Well, here's the deal. If he's around 12.8 now, and if he can go down to 9 or 10 million, that'd be a bargain. That'd be great. He does fit in. He's finally going to be in the playoffs, a threat to win the title. But if he doesn't go lower than that, Sherm, you're right back in the Harden neighborhood. You're right back to the cap and the tax and all that stuff. And so, Kmart's going to have to take a hit a little bit, unless, we bring in the whole Perkins amnesty thing again.
Darnell, strike you as a possibility that he goes that low or that they amnesty Perk?
With the rise of Serge Ibaka, I think amnestying Perk has to continue to be on the table, because, if you can get away with playing Nick Collison at 5 or moving Serge Ibaka to center at times, and then you might not necessarily need Kendrick Perkins. They're always, the Kendrick Perkins supporters will always say, what about against the teams like the Grizzlies and the Spurs and even the Clippers with a DeAndre Jordan type, But I just think that if they want to keep a 6-man scoring option off the bench, they're going to have to try to find a way to get Kevin Martin back on this roster. But one thing to keep in mind is Jeremy Lamb. I think you have to keep in mind Jeremy Lamb's on this team. He was a key piece in that trade with the Houston Rockets that sent James Harden to Houston. If they feel like he can develop into a nice scoring option, maybe they can let Kevin Martin go and put some real faith and trust in Jeremy Lamb. I'm not sure he's ready for that just yet, but who knows? He's been showing some nice things in Tulsa, and I think that if he can continue to develop, maybe they feel like they can save a lot of money and just give the reins to Jeremy Lamb.
Thanks, Darnell. You just answered one of the questions another one of our questions from our readers without it being even asked. Let's close this Thunder Thursday live chat and Hangout sponsored by Advent Heat and Air and Plumbing with this question. We're going to see the Thunder go on a 6-game road trip. John, you got the first 2 games in Dallas and Denver. A homecoming for you up in Bronco land, where they're licking their wounds after my Ravens went in and took care of them last weekend. I hate to bring that up. And Darnell, you're going to take the
You're going to take the
last. Hating to bring that up.
You're breaking up.
Darnell, you're going to take the last 4 legs. And my question is this your last stop, Darnell, in Sacramento?
I think so. I really do. Kevin Johnson, the mayor of Sacramento, is trying to. He has gotten approval from the commissioner to present a counteroffer for a local group to come up or step forward and purchase the team to keep it in Sacramento. But those things never seem to work. I mean, we saw that. You remember the Muckleshoots?
I remember
in the Seattle area. How can we forget the Muckleshoots? So those things, those last-ditch efforts never seem to work out in situations like this. And I just don't see this one working. You have an arena deal that's moving forward in the Seattle area. You have a group from Washington that has money on the table. I just don't see when it's this close to getting done, a deal sort of not getting done. And I just feel like they're going to be in Seattle next season.
And John, if that happens, it's a big, it's a start or it's a sea change for the NBA, which to this point has embraced the one-team markets like Oklahoma City, like Memphis, actually, like Sacramento, this will be the first time in the modern history of the league, especially since the David Stern era, where the NBA has left a market that it owned lock, stock, and barrel. Should that worry us in the least?
No, here's the deal. I'm going to go the opposite direction. I think Seattle's going to screw it up again. They're offering $500 million. They're offering $500 million, which is about probably $200 million too much. I mean, Clay Bennett overpaid for the Sonics, and Seattle's going to way overpay for the Kings. Here's it: 4 groups in Sacramento have stepped up and said, "We got an old shopping center lot. We'll build there. Don't go anywhere." And you know, I'm until like Nick Collison goes, "It hasn't happened yet." When it does happen, I'll answer the question, because it hasn't happened yet, and that's what I'm sticking with right now.
Jenny, Darnell's last trip to the state capital of California, yes or no?
I hear it's beautiful out there, right, Darnell?
Not bad.
Not bad. Well, yeah, I mean, the momentum is definitely trending towards that team headed to Seattle. And I got to go with momentum right now. I think what John says is right. It's not a done deal. There's still a lot of hurdles to cross. But, boy, things are really moving that way with such force and such regularity. I'm going to say yes. Last trip to Sacramento, and you know, it's unfortunate because I think as smaller markets like we are here in Oklahoma City, I think you have to like when teams are able to sustain in a market like that. But it sure seems like things are headed the wrong direction in Sacramento.
Thanks, Jenny. That's all for this edition of the Thunder Thursday Hangout on News OK Live. But you can stay with the best coverage team everywhere, every day at News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman. Remember, the Thunder Thursday Hangouts are sponsored by Advent Heat, Air, and Plumbing. If you got any needs in those areas, please get with our friends from Advent. Thanks, guys.